So when I started reading Julius Evola, that was already back in 2016. And I started with this book, The Doctrine of the Awakening, the attainment of self-mastery according to the earliest Buddhist texts. And I did not find it easy, not at all. So I maximum read like about 50 pages, could even be 20 pages. And then I stopped. But I will, just for the sake of it, read some underlining, and some random underlining here. If a being feels himself remote from metaphysical reality, then he will imagine any strength that he may acquire as a grace. Knowledge will appear as revelation in its accepted meaning in the West since the time of the Hebrew prophets, and announcer of the law may assume for him divine proportions rather than be justly regarded as one who has destroyed ignorance and who has become awakened. I can go to one more quote in the same book. I actually read this book, tried to read it a second time a couple of years later. But instead of reading it through the first time, I started reading this instead, and that was back in 2016. So that was a way easier book, I would say. But then the second time I tried to read this, it was like a couple of years later, and I still found it hard to read. I will read one more quote in it, though. I do not know, it is said, anything which when unbridled, uncontrolled, unwatched, untamed, brings such ruins as the thought, and I do not know anything which, when bridled, controlled, watched, tamed, brings such benefits as thought. Yeah, that is about having control over one's thoughts, of course, and that's not an easy task. And this book is very ascetically, so to speak. It's the talk about asceticism in a very strict way. And you can read also Buddhism represents a great historical tradition with texts and teachings available to all. It is not an esoteric school with its knowledge reserved for a restricted number of initiates. If one day normal conditions were to return, few civilizations would seem as odd as the present one, in which every form of power and dominion over material thing is sought, while mastery over one's own mind, one's own emotions, and psychic life in general is entirely overlooked. Yeah, that certainly speaks about the degeneration of West and the world in particular as a whole. But the second time I never read it through again. So I read about 50 pages. Then the third time's the same. I stopped again. And then the fourth time, a couple of years ago, I read it through again. Then before that, I had already read that one, Ride the Tiger by Julius Evola. I found this book particularly hard to grasp, though. As I found this book very hard to grasp as well. It talks a lot about existentialism and so on. And I, in particular, think the after the 10 first chapters, it starts to get really hard. The first chapters is way easier to grasp, though. He talks about how everything in the modern world is like an anesthesia over an abyss. It's very pretentious, just hiding that bottomless pit. And all modern ideologies that are built upon absolutely nothing, all from Marxism to Jean-Paul Sartre's take on very left-leaning existentialism in a way, which is kind of weird, or maybe a wrong word, but it's kind of talking against itself, you know. Because how could he define something of a value when he's really not believing in anything particular? And they also point at how the goods and the bads within Nietzsche's philosophy. I really like Friedrich Nietzsche, though, but it's this that the Übermensch, which Friedrich Nietzsche puts forth, just becomes another religious creation, even though Nietzsche put forth the Übermensch as a concept for some kind of transcendence, not true transcendence, though. But the book I later on started to read, and I had looked it up very much before, the book by Julius Evola that I started to read. But intentionally, I read The Crisis of the Modern World by René Guénon first before I started on Revolt Against the Modern World. And I think that was a benefit, because what I realized about Julius Evola when I read this one is that the more of an arsenal of the certain books that one has in the arsenal, the better understanding one would have of Julius Evola. I actually think I started with this before this one, but what helped me also with Revolt Against the Modern World, I think, is read Plato the Republic at least 3 or 4 times throughout the years, through many years, because in Plato the Republic, hierarchical structures is talked about, and also kind of decline is talked about, like in form of the rulership is descending and going downward from like the justice, like the rulership of the philosophers, then go downward to democracy, which is the rulership of the honor-based rulership, which could be seen in like Sparta and so on. And that is then descends into oligarchy, which is the currency and the means, the buying power, the merchants, and so on. And that then descend into the rulership of democracy, which is second to worse because it's based on the masses' desires and so on. And then the last one is tyranny. And this kind of a decline could be seen in the Hindu tradition as well, which Julius Evola talks a lot about. And that is like starting at the golden age, Satya Yuga, and then going downward to, can't remember the name for the silver age, which is has its facet from the moon, so to speak, and that declines to the Bronze Age, which is very Mars-like, so to speak, a very Telluric kind of masculine. Then that descends into the Iron Age, which is like that which is called Kali Yuga within the Hindu tradition. I also think that Oswald Spengler can be something good to read before Revolt Against the Modern World. I haven't read Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West, but from my understanding, the thinking, this decline of the West goes through 4 ages also within Oswald Spengler's work, so to speak. And The Crisis of the Modern World, I think, is absolutely fantastic book as well. And just to jump right into a quote within this book, we can see, the deeper one sinks into matter, the more the elements of division and opposition gain force and scope. And contrawise, the more one rises toward pure spirituality, the nearer one approaches that unity which can only be fully realized by consciousness of universal principles. So, if one hasn't read René Guénon, one can easily see that this quote rhymes very well with Revolt Against the Modern World. And I will just think if there is something else that is good to think about. I have a couple of more books by Julius Evola here. It's Eros and the Mystery of Love, and then The Hermetic Tradition by Julius Evola. And both those books, I think, is this is a good one though, but I think this is very hard to read. I think this is actually much harder than the Doctrine of the Awakening, because this is I have read books in Hermeticism before, but the Hermetic tradition is I've read it 2 times and still I find it very complex. Very complex though. I've read like this book before, which is very easy when it comes to Hermeticism, I would say. I read this many times. Then I read this one as well, Corpus Hermeticum, which is mentioned a lot, Corpus Hermeticum within the Hermetic tradition by Julius Evola. But then there's another book which I am reading at the moment. And it's this one, Sex and Character. I don't necessarily think this is the best publication of Sex and Character from my understanding. I haven't not put my hands on any other Sex and Character by Otto Weininger, but from my understanding, how the sentences is and not any wrong with the translation or anything like that, only that how they put the pages together could be a little better, but it seems to be a good book, and it Julius Evola based a certain amount of this within Sex and Character here in this book. So this book could probably work very good combined with this one as well, I would think, because then you know a little bit about where Julius Evola got his inspiration to start writing this book as well, you know. Because in this book, Sex and Character, Otto Weininger talks about that there is like a kind of equation where if a man is 70% man, then he's if he's then 30% woman, and then he will need a woman that is 70% woman and 30% man, because that together adds up to 100%, so to speak. And looking upon it, it becomes like yin and yang, like the little black dot within the white and the little white dot within the black. So little feminine within the masculine and little masculine within the feminine. So I did this video very spontaneously, but so I will put this up, and we will see if anybody is looking into it, so to speak.